So the second part of this, I want to talk about some keys to success in college selection. So we talked about finding the right fit, find a sweet spot. I'll tell you what that means in a second. Beware of what a reach is, ask the right questions, and stay in the driver's seat. So key number one, the goal is to find the right fit. So you got three kind of major categories. You can add a few more on if you want, but if you were making a list of what attributes you want to kind of compare in schools, these are the top three. Athletic, and this is in no particular order, athletically, academically, or financially. You want to find the right fit primarily in those three categories. If you want to add on, location of the college, travel, distance from home, warm weather, cold weather, things like that, I'd highly recommend they fall lower in the priority list than these three things, because these three are ultimately going to determine how you view your college experience. So athletically, are you going to be a person that can impact the team? Are you going to be involved in that conference or championship ranking process? Are you going to be able to grow there? Are you going to be in a position where you feel like that coach and that program is going to help you get better, is going to help you be excited about going in every day and trying to improve yourself? Academically, does it have the right field you want? Are you going to be comfortable, challenged, overwhelmed? Where are you going to be academically, when you get there? Kind of some of that is based on what you do in high school. And then financially, this is a real thing. We can't ignore this. And parents, I urge you to have a conversation early on with your student athletes about what's realistic and about where you start, so they have a good idea and they don't go down a road that's not really going to be feasible. It doesn't mean that you tell them you can't do this or you can't do that. It's just something that needs to be an open book. I believe the people that have been the most successful have been open about that with their student athletes. They go through it and start by saying, hey, we've got these kind of resources. This is kind of what you need to be looking for. And we'll kind of jump in when we need to and help you with that part. But financially is, are you really going to be able to afford the cost? Whether you get financial aid or not, will you be able to afford the cost? The other thing is, can you afford it for the entire duration you're going to be there? More than once when I was at Queens, we had athletes that came in after their sophomore year and said, hey, I was really excited to come here on a 10% scholarship, but actually I was kind of banking on making 50% the last 2 years, and I have to leave if I don't get it. It's like, well, we don't have 50% scholarship to give you. And it's just, they were hoping it would work out or whatever it is. Please look at that full term, 4 years at least, or 5 if that's what the school is offering, and understand that you need to be able to go all the way through that. If that you're going to get to a point where you can't afford that, you need to be upfront and honest early, or you're going to put an athlete in a situation where they're showing up every day to the pool thinking they've got to perform or else they're going to get kicked out. And that is a really, really quick way to be bad in the pool. Okay, so, and again, parents, just be honest with that. Key number 2, find your sweet spot. Like I said, I tried to make some pictures to make this not too boring. So I kind of look at this way. As we caucus coaches, we want to put people in a sweet spot, whether it's in a training group, in a meet, in a practice. There's a range of a scale you can kind of put that on, right? You have things that are comfortable, not really going to grow when you're comfortable. You might be comfortable, you might like it. How many swimmers like working on technique at about 25% effort? Yeah, I'm comfortable, this is great. I feel like I got better, okay. Challenging, what's going to push you, but you feel like you can do it, you can really strive for it. You might not get it every time, you might fail here and there, but by and large, you understand the process, you go there. And then there's overwhelming. We're going to put you in an environment where you are not, there's no way on God's green earth you're going to achieve what you want to achieve, and you're just every day trying to survive, whether it's in swimming or in school, something like that. If you get put into that environment, chances are you're not going to be able to grow. I put my little red arrow kind of on purpose, and this is probably the SwimMac way of doing things. We'd like you to be somewhere in that upper end of challenging. We want you to seek out a challenge. We want you to be a little bit uncomfortable, okay? Not a little uncomfortable, a lot uncomfortable if you're with me, but by and large, you don't want to pick something that's going to be completed. And I go back to that story about Trey Hoover. I don't know, but was he overwhelmed by what he got into? Was he prepared for that? Did he have the mindset to perform at that level, or was that something he struggled with? We want you to find that sweet spot, and that's up to everybody. That's where your coach can help you. Having a really honest conversation and hey, where do you see me at? What do you see me struggle with? What happens? And and it takes us a couple years to kind of get used to that, but. We've seen swimmers that go into a training group and maybe they're just so excited to get into that next training group, maybe it's Shark 2 or Senior 1, whatever it might be, and then they're so overwhelmed by it that they don't have that chance to grow. They get stuck there. So it really is, it takes kind of some of the fun out of that challenge and growth. So, your job is to kind of find your sweet spot. I'd suggest kind of setting up the categories and kind of going through it that way and trying to kind of figure out where in those different categories, athletic, academic, financial, college life, things like that. And don't forget, I didn't list it on here, but it's very real. I mean, if you know you need a church to be connected to, don't ignore that. If that's been a huge part of your life at this point and say, I'm going to go to this school. It's a great school. It's a little farther away. There's really no church groups at the school, but I'll be okay. Be careful with that. I mean, that's a real part of your life that can have very big consequences if you're not putting that in this form of thing. I can easily swing that needle into overwhelming and be really difficult. Key number 3, what's a reach school? Okay, so this is one of my favorite things to tell people. A reach school in these 3 categories. If it is a reach in any of these categories, it is a reach. A lot of times I have these conversations and people say, I can definitely handle the academics and we can definitely afford it. But the athletics is way over my head. But you know what? The other 2 are good, so I'm going to keep it on my list. And, that's fine. Just understand that's a reach. Okay, if it's, you can do it academically, you can get into the school on your own. Athletically, you're right up the wheelhouse, but you can't afford it. And you're waiting on a scholarship or something like that, it's a reach. It's a chance that you're waiting on something else besides your own ability or your own control to make that dream a possibility, and that's a reach. Okay, you want to stay in the driver's seat. You want to make sure you stay in control. Just be aware that just because it's a reach in only one of those categories, it's still a reach. So just think through it that way. And we want to encourage you to have a reach. We don't want people to sit here and go, I'm just going to find all the schools that I'm comfortable in and I'm going to stay there. I want you to, we want you to be challenged in this process. We want you to find places that are going to force you to grow and learn things. So please do go ahead and reach. Just don't have all reaches. Okay, make sure you have at least a couple of those schools that you know about that are not a reach for you. And it may change how you swim or how you experience swimming at that school. I didn't mention it earlier, but a lot of schools have a club swimming team. Maybe there's that academic school out there that's a perfect fit for you. You're not sure you're going to be able to even walk on. You find out you can't, but you know that this academic program is exactly what you want to do. Maybe being a club swimmer at that school is a great option. And I don't want to discount that because there's a lot of people out there that have done some fantastic things, just being a club swimmer and being really involved in their school and helping out from that direction. So, key 4, ask the right question. So this is probably where me personally, and I think Sarah has come into play the most as coaches in this. People want to know what questions to ask. What do I do when I talk to a coach? What happens next? What do I do next? What question they said this, how do I ask this back? This is, and then also this is what I've really challenged people over the last year. As this recruiting timeline is sped up, if you're fortunate enough to be in that situation, you need to know how to ask the right questions early. There's a simple rule to kind of figure this out. You want questions that are going to allow you to see connections to people, connections to the program, connections between people. If you're asking questions like that, and hopefully some of these examples will help, you'll be able to see what that program's really about. If you ask questions that are about things, services, what you get, you're going to get a list of pros and cons, which isn't all bad, but it's not really going to tell you how you live your life day to day at that school. Okay? Parents that have been through college, you understand what college looks like. For the athletes that are sitting here, most of you, unless you have an older sibling, have no idea what it even looks like. The idea of walking in class your first day, like waking up, day 1 of classes, there is nobody setting off an alarm saying, hey, you got to get to class, 9 o'clock. Come on, you're waiting. I'm going to drive you there. That doesn't happen. It's you wake up and you got to get there. Nobody told you where it is. You got to figure it all out. It's a very different lifestyle and experience, and the things that happen day to day in college are built on, your good experience are going to build on connections with other people, teachers, students, teammates, coaches. Okay, ask questions that help you understand connections, not just what you get there. Hey, how big is your weight room? How many lanes does your pool have? Those kind of things. Those aren't telling you about people. Those are telling about what they have. So some good questions, I think, asking coaches, what are the goals of the program? How'd you evaluate last year? Do you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? Why? Ask, if you can get them to tell you that, that's a great way to understand how that coach thinks. I think this is a really good one, and a lot of people forget to ask, what are the graduating seniors going on to do? This was a question that one of our student athletes asked one of the top-ranked programs in the NCAA last year, and the answer was so bad she took it off her list on the spot. She thought, I said, hey, throw this out there. She goes, my parents are really concerned about what I'm going to do after school. I said, ask her. Say, what do they do? The coach's answer was, I think a lot of them are, spending some time with their parents. They're really, kind of getting their feet under them, and then they'll get started. So you're telling me you're going to go halfway across the country, You're going to go through all this effort with this swim team at this great academic institution, and you're going home to stay with your parents? Now, she might have caught Coach on her bad day. Maybe she wasn't thinking. Maybe she didn't hear the question right. But whatever it was, that was the last time that pretty much did it. And I have to say that's her. I mean, if that's what's really going on, and she didn't want to be a part of that. She wanted to go to a school where they were going on to grad school. They were going on to jobs. They were getting plugged into different things. It's a great question to ask. This is a good one. Have you coached an athlete similar to me? I've got these times. I'm really good at kicking. Got a nice long stroke. Has anybody in your program come through like that? What were the things they did? Did that help them? Did that hurt them? What did you learn from that? I think that's a good way to kind of get an idea how that coach is going to interact with you. I also like this one. What student athletes what do they struggle with while they're here? What problems do they have? Every year, what do you have to deal with? What is it? Well, our athletes really have a hard time understanding that first week of exams. We really struggle with that. Every year, they really get bogged down, and we really have to put a lot of emphasis on doing well that part of the year. Again, it may be a good answer or a bad answer, but it's going to give you an idea of what your day-to-day life looks like there, how you're going to interact with people, not just what they have. And I got some others on there, and by the way, if anybody asks a great question in this process and you learn something really amazing out of it, please email me so I can kind of start a list of these things. I think the more we share on this, the better. But I'd love to hear if people had an interaction with a coach and they asked something really good. I'd love to hear about it. Not always helpful questions. Things that talk about services or about the program. What kind of supports the student athlete? And don't get this wrong. These aren't bad questions from you don't need to ask them, but just understand they're not going to help you really delineate the connection to the program, and you'll see what I mean here. Do swimmers earn more scholarship each year? If that's something you need to know, if that's something you're trying to use to make a decision financially about the program, that is not a bad question to ask. It needs to be asked appropriately. It needs to be asked the right time. You need to be open to the answer. It's not a bad question, but to start there, and hey, is this how you reward swimmers? Do you do it this way? Again, the last question on here, I want to reach this goal. How's your program going to take me there? Not a bad question necessarily, but ask in the right way. I'd really like to be this level of swimmer. I'm really working hard at these things. What do you think a swimmer like me needs to do to get there? When you phrase it that way, you're talking about what you're going to give, not what you're going to get. That changes the question completely. I personally hate the third one on there. I got it all the time when I was at Queens. It's about the second question in everybody's mouth. Are you a quality program or a quantity program? Yes. Yes, we are. We are a large quantity of quality, whatever that means for you. And if they ask that, it's just generally asking, I would like to sprint. That's kind of the answer they're looking for. And every year, the sprinters, about the third practice in, when they realized they had to sprint more than everybody else, they didn't want to do that anymore. Okay, stay in the driver's seat. If you navigate towards making a selection, create a plan that helps you choose. The best case scenario is you're in an option to choose where you would like to go, you feel excited about your options, and you're not waiting by the phone to get a phone call to see if you made it. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to happen, but that should be the goal. That should be the goal of the process. Let's make sure we think through, and this is what gets really hard, right? Because it all starts fine and good, and then we get down to those last 5 schools, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if I'm going to get into any of these, or I'm not sure I'm going to hear back from any of these. Keep some options on there that you're excited about. Find some things in your sweet spot that you can be excited about. I do recommend this. I know a lot of athletes are committing early, and we'll get to that part. Go ahead and go through the application process at a couple places. You don't know what's really going to happen, and it really does help to have a couple of schools where you actually apply to. I know for some people it might be an application fee or something like that, but it really isn't a bad idea to kind of go through that process in a couple places, even if you know where you're going. I think more and more we're going to see places that things change at the last minute, and you don't want to be the one left holding the bag. So I'll get to that in a minute, but just something to think about as you go forward. Okay, a little bit about scholarship here. Total limit in scholarship is set by the NCAA. That's at 9.9, 14.9, whatever it is. The school itself decides how much it can actually reward. And last I heard, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Davidson is Division I school. They're allowed to give out 9.9 scholarships to the men's side. They give out 1. Okay, that's intentional. Their school is like, look, our priority is academics. We want people coming here for the academics. We'd like the swim team to be able to bring some academically minded people in. We'll let you choose how to use that, but you have 1. Georgia Tech, last I know, had about 3.5 or 4 total. That's an ACC school. Different schools fund their programs differently. You hear the term fully funded, it means that school has given that program the full allotment of NCAA scholarships to give out. So just because the school is Division I does not mean they have 9.9 scholarships. Very rarely is that the case. Its scholarship is spread across all 4 classes currently enrolled, so that 9.9 is spread across all 28 people on the program. It's not you get 9.9 each year, it's across everybody in the program. So that means if a senior's on a full ride, as soon as he graduates, that coach has a full ride to give to the rest of the program or somebody coming in. This is a really tricky one to read, and I included an article at the end of your handout, and it's posted on our website. Splash Magazine did an article recently about college scholarships, and it really talks through the ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes with scholarships, and it's pretty complex. It is not easy to understand. And a lot of it comes from this bullet point right here. Combining athletic aid and academic aid can cause some big problems. Most schools out there have a merit scholarship, at some level. Like if you're, the top in your class and you're this, you're going to get your SAT scores of this, you get $10,000 to go to the school just by signing up, right? It's just the state's way of kind of funding and paying for some of the education within the state. I know Georgia had the Hope Scholarship. Basically, if you got a B average, tuition was free. You can go to any state school if you got in. It's a great benefit. And it actually allowed the swim team to go get some in-state kids, and all they had to do was get Bs. And they came in on a full ride and didn't have to pay a dime. The coach could use his scholarship elsewhere. But when you start combining those, now the NCAA determines what scholarships are allowed to be counted. And if you're a counter, it means you're receiving academic aid that is considered counted by the NCAA. So if there's a scholarship where part of your athletic accomplishments goes into the award of that scholarship, it's a counted scholarship. So if you have a $500 scholarship from the Rotary Club up the street because you are a junior national swimmer, you have $500 towards your NCAA. If you accept that $500 goes towards that school's 9.9 scholarships. So that coach has to be real careful. If he may say, I want to be at 9.9 and I'm going to give you $1,000 a year to come to this school. Great, you sign up, you take your $500 from Rotary Club, you turn it in, and then his compliance director is going to give him a call and say, hey, you're $500 over the limit. You got to cut somebody down. And he didn't know it. That starts to become a problem. So there's a lot of things that go into that, and I don't mean to scare you, but just understand scholarship is not as cut and dry as you think it is. Signing an NLI is the only official way to receive a scholarship. Offers up until the beginning of your senior year are all verbal. They're those are not, you can't put it in writing until your senior year of high school. Can a coach even put it in an email on what's officially going to be offered to you? And then when you get that signing paper on signing day, that's the only thing that tells you what you're officially being offered, and you sign on the dotted line. Now, not often does it happen where somebody changes that number. That's a pretty sleazy thing to do, and most coaches know that's not going to get them ahead. But just be aware that verbal offers are just that. They're verbal offers. There's nothing binding about it. Swimming is an equivalency sport. Football, some other sports are head count sports. Basically, you get a full ride or you get nothing. Swimming can divide it up. They can say, we're going to give you hear a lot, 10%, 30%, 20%, 80%. It's usually divided up into 4 categories. Room, board, tuition, and books. Let's say the total cost of the school is $40,000. Books is $500. That's basically a 10% scholarship. I'm not going to do the math correctly off the top of my head. Tuition might be the bulk. Maybe tuition is $20,000. That's a 50% scholarship. So they combine 2 of them, you can get to 60%. But it's going to be broken into those chunks. So when you start to get verbal or written offers, you get to that point, it's going to look like that. Scholarships are awarded to different swimmers at different schools and are different from year to year. There is no hard, set, and fast rule at any school that I've ever heard of on how you get a scholarship. They may say, hey, these are the times you need to be considered for a scholarship. But if they don't have any available that year, because maybe their junior class has got a lot of scholarship tied up in it, or they have a ton of breaststrokers, they don't need a breaststroker, and you're a breaststroker, different people get different scholarship amounts at different times for different things. Do not get confused. Scholarship is not, and I've said this to a lot of people, scholarship is great to have. It's an achievement. It's something to celebrate. It is not a it is not a indication of your worth. Okay, and I'll say it again, it's not an indication of your worth. Teams can still really want you to be on their team and be really excited about coaching you and know that you're going to be an awesome part of their school and not be able to offer a scholarship, or not be maybe that coach's philosophy is not to offer somebody like you a scholarship at that time. It certainly is nice. It certainly makes you feel wanted. I've talked to too many athletes who say, if I can just get 10%, I'll go there because that means they really want me. Like, well, yeah, kinda, but is that swing? Are you moving out of that category of best fit because somebody's putting that small dollar amount up to kind of say, hey, you're on a scholarship? Just be careful with that.